beauty as a food stride stream. We've named this because, of course, there are a lot of things that we can put into urban food cultivation, but there's also a lot of stuff that we get out of urban food cultivation. And I brought one of the experts, global experts here with me today, Henry Gordon-Smith from Agritecture. Henry, so good to have you on the screen next to us here.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. Greetings from New York City.
Okay, wonderful. So, Henry, tell us a bit more about the stuff that you're doing.
So I'm the founder and CEO of Agritexture. About 12 years ago, I got interested in the idea of urban agriculture, but I found that there was a lot of gaps in the discussion. A lot of times people are talking about greenhouses or vertical farms or soil, and one being better than the other. For us at Agritecture, we believe there's no one size fits all, and so we really embrace design thinking and architectural thinking as applied to integrating urban agriculture. So we started in 2011 with a blog, blogging about the future of urban agriculture, covering various case studies around the world, investments, technologies, events. In 2014, we started getting consulting requests from people that wanted unbiased, technology agnostic data and design for urban farms. And we launched the world's first urban agriculture consultancy. Since then, we've advised on over 200 consultations in 40 countries, so very different scales and climates and economic and social conditions. And more recently, in 2020, we decided to scale up our impact, and we built the world's first farm planning software called Agritecture Designer. Using Agritecture Designer, you can estimate the CapEx, OpEx, yield, water, energy, labor, return on investment of any greenhouse or vertical farm. You can also learn the best practices for urban agriculture, and you can submit your business plan to financing solutions in North America or equipment solutions anywhere in the world on our marketplace and platform.
That's pretty awesome. And I mean, so now it's actually easy for us to plan how to get urban agriculture into the environment.
Totally. You can now do it online, much lower cost than going through a consultant. You can run through your ideas. You can even hire us for a little bit of advice as you build your models on the platform, still at a fraction of the cost of typical consulting.
So that's pretty cool. So by the way, I don't know, Henry, if you brought any pictures with you that you could share with us, because it's not just only about building the most efficient agricultural systems. I mean, like, it's called Agritecture, and you know, it can also be a piece of beauty, adding things to a city, like beauty, like social interaction, like integration, like jobs, etc. Do you factor those things in too when it comes to calculating the effects of urban agriculture?
Yeah, sure. I can share some images. I'll share some slides from a presentation we did for a large hotel group about how urban agriculture integration can stimulate the senses and be part of the aesthetic. But before I get into that, it's important to know that there are really, 6 categories of impact that Agritecture thinks about when we're working on urban agriculture. And the 3 primary ones are pretty obvious. They're the triple bottom line: the economic, social, and environmental impact. So different types of farms will have either openness to society, come see the farm, learn, while high-tech vertical farms, for example, are not open to the public. But on the other hand, more socially minded community gardens, are going to have a difficult time growing food in the wintertime, or they're going to have a difficult time making money, while vertical farms may have more economic benefit. So when we look out at different urban farms, or when we design them, we think about these impact categories. In the second category of impact, you have things like aesthetic impact. Does it beautify the city? Does it inspire us to live greener? You also have health impact. Does it help us eat better food? Does it help us stay active? And you also have education. Is this a tool to do research and education? So those are the 6 categories that we look at with every single project. I need permission to share my screen if you want me to show some of these images very briefly.
Yep, I think the tech team is up for giving you all permissions to share your screen. I look at them now, see what they're doing.
Yeah, so I mean, those categories, again, and you can sort of think about urban agriculture on a spectrum of low tech to high tech as well, right? You can think about community gardens, rooftop farms that are a little bit more engineered, farms that have both soil and hydroponics, hybrid models, high-tech greenhouses, and then vertical farms. And there's just trade-offs across the spectrum, whether you're a city planner thinking about integrating agriculture, or whether you are building your own farm, or whether you're a consultant like us. You really need to weigh all those trade-offs. It's a simple framework. But again, Agritecture, we define ourselves as the art, science, and practice of integrating agriculture into the built environment. So it's about balancing these things, right? You need the art, you need the aesthetic, because these are cities, these are places that need to be beautified, places that people want to live. The science is important because in the end, we're working with plants, and it's very important that the plants are the focus of this to be productive and beautiful and delicious. But it's also the practice, the operations of operating the farm, as well as the sales and marketing. So we try to balance these three things in all the work that we do. So, this can be vertical farming or hydroponics. Those are some of the options. This one on the left here is a hydroponic vertical farm that we installed in an event space here in New York called Project Farmhouse. They wanted to have a space where they could have, big dinners, but there was also something that was visually appealing there. The materials choices matter when aesthetic is the focus. So even though we had plastics, we did actually cover some of this in wood. We used high quality glass and metals. We welded various pieces of equipment to make it have a more industrial feeling to it. The benefits we sort of talked about a little bit. I want to show you some other things. I mean, what's important is that food and agriculture is a really top trend year over year. Right? People care more about local food. They care about the experiences related to that. This is an image of Farm one of our clients, and this is actually a portable table hydroponic farm that they bring to events. So they do a pop-up event, and they sort of put this table there with the plants, and then they have someone there. This is David there, who's harvesting plants for people to put in their drinks or to add to their food or just to experience and taste. And they even put some dry ice in it to make it kind of smoky and cool. And, this is a real trend. This is something people care about and that they're willing to pay for. So again, with this hotel, we were trying to help them understand the benefits for that. And we sort of laid out a couple of different integrations for their brand that would be possible. One is sort of like Project Farmhouse, this idea of aesthetic grow displays that can be integrated. They can be brought into a salad bar or a restaurant, or they can just be there visually. There's also the idea, this hasn't really happened yet, but you could push the boundaries and say, why even go down to the cafe? You can have microgreens productions like this Agrilution unit that's available for homes, or you could put it into various longer stay accommodations. A production farm is what I typically recommend. You're going to get the maximum benefit from scale. So if a hotel or a real estate development want something beautiful, that's great. But if they can actually have something productive and beautiful, that's better. So that tends to be outdoor agriculture or greenhouses where you can have a bigger variety of products. Obviously, this depends on the climate, but this is sort of an example of what that looks like. And then you can actually have entire hotels or entire buildings where the concept itself is agriculture. And we're starting to see this with a couple of different developments around the world. There's one in Staten Island that sort of has its own farm, and then you sort of pay a fee and you get product from that, but the farm is sort of the central piece of this. There's something really emerging across the United States for many years now called agri-burbs, which are suburban developments with farms instead of golf courses. So I think also this goes beyond aesthetics actually, because now when we think about these real estate projects with the challenges that are happening with supply chain threats, quality of food. We've seen food safety scares. We've seen the war in Ukraine affect pricing. I think that this is going to become more of a standard, right? People are going to want to have some food security when they're making a real estate investment or when they're choosing to stay somewhere for a longer period of time. And I think that, these sort of thematic focused agriculture developments are going to continue. And it's not only beautiful, but also going to be very important to people's values. So, yeah, I don't know what else you want me to talk about.
No. I think, Henry, I think this is amazing because what you're showing to me is not just a normal CEA type of implementation. You're actually showcasing how you can weave food production into the urban fabric itself and actually get a lot of value out of that, irrespective if you're a you have a rooftop somewhere, or if you're a hotelier, and getting food and the sense of farm. It's getting the sense of living on a farm again, but in the middle of New York City. I think it's super vital also that you point out that perhaps food security could be built into the urban infrastructure itself, as long as you think a little outside the box and take some help from people like you, for instance. I think it's been amazing to have you here, Henry. And for those of you who haven't yet visited the Agritecture website, please do. There are more examples there to be found. You can also, I guess, engage in a little calculating when it comes to starting your next CA project, and definitely by having these types of assets out there, not having to go to substandard consultants out there, but you can go straight for the fountain of knowledge, which is Agritecture these days. I think you all should. Thank you so much for joining, Henry. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for having me. I wish you all a great event. Feel free to reach out if you need me. Bye.
Bye. Okay, it's always fun to speak to Henry because he's such an inspiring guy. But let's talk more about inspiration now. I have the honor of leaving stage again, but for the better for all of you. We're going to get into what air tastes like with Shilei Sang from Solar Foods, and moderated by none other than Mimi Billing from Sifted. Please come up on stage so I can leave for a while.
Thank you, Johan.
Please, welcome.
So this is great. So before we kick off, you're obviously the Chief Commercial Officer.
Yes.
Yes. And just Solar Foods, as Johan mentioned, is about making a protein out of thin air.
Right.
I mean, how does that work?
Right. Well, actually, it's quite simple. It's down to kind of biology and chemistry. So if you look at kind of what we humans are made of and proteins, 99% on atom level of the atoms that we are made of can be found from air. Well, you just need to come up with a way how to capture those atoms and use them. And kind of in our process, if you look at, for example, carbon, which is the backbone of all living organisms, most organisms get their carbon by eating food that is produced from soil. Whereas in our process, the microbe that we're using can actually capture that CO2 from air,
yes,
so they eat the CO2.
There is a little get-together for some people. You've been invited?
Johan, maybe you should switch off the microphone.
Okay, so...
Okay.
Yeah, so basically our microbe, they eat the CO2 from air. That's why, and not food that's produced from soil. So therefore, in our process, we are actually capturing CO2 rather than releasing it and making the most sustainable protein on Earth.
Okay, so I know that you make Soleil, which is the protein, out of fermentation process.
Right.
And fermentation is like huge, right? Mycelium, like the fungus, it's like, and also you can make coffee paste out of it, you can do egg white. I mean, how does that differ?
Right. So what we do is called gas fermentation, which is a very niche technology within the wider fermentation landscape. And most fermentation, when you talk about fermentation, what you're doing is you're working with microbes. And most microbes, like I mentioned earlier, they eat sugar or grain. That's where they get their energy from, right? Because they're a living organism. Whereas in our microbe, they eat gas, so they eat CO2. That's why it's called a gas fermentation.
Okay, so why is it so important for Solar Foods not to be part of the whole agriculture chain?
Right, exactly. Well, like I think most of us know, climate change, if you look at the greenhouse gas emissions, 30% of that is due to food production related land use change. And where that comes from is the use of land, the use of water, animal farming. So if we can get that kind of food that's produced from earth out of the equation, you can make it much more sustainable. So we don't need that much land, we don't need that much water, and we don't need that much fertilizers. And therefore, and as we are capturing the CO2, we are, we are the most sustainable in that sense.
Okay, so making a protein out of thin air, which is like great. How far have you come? I mean, do you have a factory or?
Right. So we operate now a pilot factory. They're producing small amounts for product development, but we are at the moment also building our first commercial scale factory in Finland, and that will be operational by end of next year. So, and also what we're doing simultaneously, because this is a completely new type of food ingredient that the humans haven't consumed before, so we will need to get regulatory approval. So for the approval, our first approval will be from Singapore, most likely already this summer. But for the bigger markets like US and EU, that will be end of next year. So here in the Nordics, you will get Solein powered products on the store shelf, end of next year, hopefully.
Okay, that's great. So, because we know that FDA and ETSA, I mean, they are very slow in approving these kind of products, right?
Right.
But you will have it done by the time that your factory is up and running.
Right, exactly. So we are already in the process of that, and the speed depends on the jurisdiction. So Singapore is the fastest, US is faster than EU, and so on.
So what kind of foods would we suspect to see Solein in?
Right. So Solein is a extremely versatile ingredient, so it can be used in several different categories, like a meat analog is an obvious one, but then also in dairy analogs like non-dairy ice cream, non-dairy yogurt, and then also in beverages. And then also we are working with some of the leading bakery companies in the world to use Solein as a partial egg white replacer as well.
Okay, I know that Fatse is one of your co-owners,
Yes.
so that would probably be one of them, right?
Most likely, yes.
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 And I mean, how big can this become? Because I think when I spoke to your CEO at one time, he said we're going to do 1 million meals
Right.
in a few years. I
Right.
mean,
yeah, exactly. So we hope to at least 1 million meals at some point. I think the things what we need to do is really kind of scale up the production. So we are building the first factory, but that's still kind of it's commercial scale, but it's still small scale versus the whole demand for this type of proteins. Yeah, and because it can be used in so many different categories, the demand is really not an issue, but it's more how fast can we ramp up the supply.
mm. And if you look at all the kind of other, like pea protein, soy, hemp, I mean, where will you be able to kind of just steal the markets from them, so to say?
Yeah. What we try to, what we aim at is that Solein would be as widely used as soy. In that sense, because our business model is B2B, so we make ingredients and we sell it to food brands that then kind of take that Solein and make an end product out of it. So in that sense, on a kind of a micro level, we are competing with soy and pea. But of course, on a macro level, we hope that soy, pea, hemp, Solein all will grow and take share from animals, what we're trying to replace, actually.
But what about the price? Because I suppose when you have a completely novel food, it
Right.
costs a lot in the beginning.
Yes, yes.
So when do you think that you will be comparable in price with soy?
Yeah, exactly. So because we are aiming for this to be widely used, so like a commodity rather than a niche product, so we need to reach that kind of commodity price level, and soy is one of the most cost competitive proteins, and that is the level what we believe we can also reach when we build our full-scale factory that will be before 2030. So we're talking about below 3 euros per kilo is the price level we can reach.
Okay, so because obviously you're building a factory now and you raised, is it $65 million?
Yeah, 65 million to date, euros.
I mean, building a factory is expensive.
Correct.
Do you have enough capital to actually finish it?
Yeah, we have enough capital to finish it, but then we need also capital to operate it afterwards. So the factory will be operational end of next year, and that's when our kind of runway ends as well. So we are in the process of kind of raising funds this year and closing this year.
I mean, since I usually write about startups, I guess that a question would come up like, how difficult is it to raise money for this right now?
Yeah, well, it is clearly more difficult than maybe half a year ago, but I think the big trends are there. I mean, we are on the right side of history, and so we do believe that we are able to raise those funds.
Okay. So obviously, Solar Foods is also based in Finland, where you have the VTT, which has come up with loads of great innovation in this field. I mean, do you think it's good for you to be based there in that way? Has it been useful?
Yeah, it is our kind of home, and that's where the technology is from. But I think for us, in order to kind of take this from forest to fork, we will need, other than technology, we'll need a wide array of other capabilities as well. So we have the fermentation, but then we need the expertise in regulatory approval. We need expertise in product development and also sales. And those, unfortunately, Finland alone will not cannot supply all that talent. So we need to also source people from across the globe. And for example, we have team members in Switzerland that are working on the regulatory part.
Okay. So do you think that, I mean, it's been hard to, because obviously this is a completely new thing. I mean, is it difficult to reach out with what you are actually doing? I mean, to not just businesses, but I think to people as well, so they have a positive feeling about this product.
Yeah, well, I think that was kind of, I joined Solar Foods a year ago, and before joining this, that was also some of the concerns I had. But to my surprise, there's so much pull for this type of product, so I don't really see that as a major issue, because also what we're working on is microbes, so it's a bacteria. But if you think about kind of other products currently out there on the market, for example, probiotic yogurt, they're also using bacteria, and that's a living bacteria, and that's 40% of the yogurt market is probiotic. So if you compare that to that, then I don't see a problem of gaining that kind of wider consumer acceptance.
How many people are you working for Solar Foods now?
We have 22 people at the moment.
Okay. Are you planning to scale that up when you?
Yeah, definitely. So we are in the hiring mode now, and continuing to hire great talents.
Okay. So what do you think will be the main challenges for you before, say, December next year, when you're supposed to be able to sell your products on the market?
Yeah. Well, I think as we're a startup, we're facing countless challenges all the time. But I think the biggest is really kind of scaling up that production, because the technology is there, the product is there, it's great. Also, from a kind of regulatory perspective, we have done all the tests, we know it's safe. But it's really about getting the steel up and getting those products large amounts out. So and having an impact. So it's really about scaling, I think. Not only for Solar Foods, but in my opinion, for whole alternative protein industry, is that not focusing only on the technology, but actually the production part as well, more and more.
So all the middlemen in the production part of actually doing your factory, that's one of the key issues.
Right. Yeah, it's getting the factory up and of getting the money for the factory, and getting the factory up and getting it to the right productivity and cost level, and do it in a safe and hygienic way.
So if Solar Foods it's going to be successful in this, how do you see that going to affect the whole kind of food market? I mean, what do you see in 5 years' time?
Well, I hope that we could do our part in this transformation, where we're kind of migrating away from animals, and that first of all, consumers would through our story be more and more open to testing new type of proteins, but also that we would inspire other entrepreneurs to come up with new technologies and new ways to tackle this challenge.
So what does it taste like?
Well, I think the best thing is that you can taste wherever you want it to taste, because we can use it in several different categories, and the natural taste of solar is quite mild with a bit of umami. So basically, you can transform that to different type of products, which is what also the food brands want, is that they want this versatile ingredient that doesn't have a distinct own taste, that they then can modify to their own needs.
I don't do protein shakes myself, but I've heard that they usually taste a little bit, weird.
Right.
I mean, do you think that if you, because I think that that's one of the things that you also may be planning to do in the future.
Right.
I mean, that wouldn't taste anything then. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it has this kind of a taste is a bit of a subjective thing, but I think we know that our taste is milder than the most commonly used proteins at the moment, so soy or pea. So it's more easier to hide those tastes than what's currently out there on the market.
Okay, so when you start off now, what will your price point be? I mean, you will be more expensive in the beginning, right?
Right. So it will be more expensive at the beginning, but still commercially viable. So we're talking about more tens of euros rather than hundreds of euros. So it'll be more of a kind of closer to those more expensive plant-based protein sources. But of course, as said, then as we can scale it up, then we are going to reach those double-digit cost levels. Single-digit cost levels.
So what do you think will be the most, the product that's going to be most liked with Solar? Which one is going to go the best? Is it the bread, or is it?
Well, we hope, of course, all of them. So I do have hopes that all of those, because we kind of in the end of next year when we come out, we don't want to come out with only one category and then wait for half a year and do another one. We want to kind of go out with all the handful of categories we have chosen to demonstrate the full breadth of what Solen can do.
Okay, great. So, I mean, we can't take questions, but Johan, you might have a question here that you feel like we haven't
No, I'm yeah. Oh, I'm instantly mic'd here. I like that. No, there are so many questions, of course, and I think one thing that strikes me is that when we start talking about these big bioreactor productions of food, we talk about mycoproteins, we talk about solar proteins, we talk about lab grown, and we all see different complications with these. So based on the technical maturity, what do you think has the best chances so far? Is the mycoprotein, is the solar protein, or is the lab grown or cell ag protein?
Yeah, well, I'm not an expert of those other technologies, and I don't want to comment on them, but I think all of them are great. I think if you look at the size of the challenge we're tackling, the size of the meat market, I don't think any one technology is enough. I think we would need several and all of those to be successful to really kind of to make an impact.
But isn't this a perfect storm then? We have several technologies at the same time attacking a vast incumbent market here. So what type of chances do you give traditional meat, say 10 years from now? Snowball in hell or something like that? Or?
Well, yeah, I think it depends maybe on the region, on the demographics, but of course, it doesn't look that optimistic. I think there will probably still be demand for the normal meat, but hopefully it will be much, much smaller than now, especially now when the kind of younger demographics that have never really tasted meat, so they don't really have any need for meat imitates, right? So when those kind of consumer groups take a bigger share of the purchasing power, then I think, then the meat's share will go down dramatically.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's
Thank
our
you very
time.
much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. That was great. It's always fun to be able to be part of the audience and to listen to other people's great questions and great remarks. But now you have to deal with me again. No, not just with me, because now we call up on stage John Angelo from The Alchemist. John, come up here on stage.
Thank you.
Another bearded guy. That's always fun. A big round of applause for Angelo. Even